Today we're going to talk about myths surrounding virginity and becoming sexually active. In order to do this, we must first define virginity. The most simple definition is the time before you've had sex, which leads us to an even more complicated question. What is sex? People define sex different ways. Our society usually defines it as a penis entering a vagina, but where does that leave people who have sex with other people with their same types of genitals? Aren't people who have sex involving two vulvas or two penises still having sex? Before this turns into the swing scene from Chasing Amy, let's take a look at another perspective. What is a doctor asking whenever they ask if you're sexually active? What they're looking for is if you're pregnant or you have an STD. There are a lot of sexual activities that can cause either of these things to happen. If during anal sex semen drips down to the outer part of the vagina, also known as the vulva, that can cause pregnancy. If during nude grinding ejaculation happens on the vulva, this can also cause pregnancy. STDs can be passed from intercourse, anal sex, oral sex, grinding naked, and using your hands. So if you're sexually active when you say any of these things occur, that must mean you've had sex, right? Also, I personally believe that sex has to involve consent. Rape isn't sex. So what does that say about rape survivor and virginity? At this point you may be asking yourself, but what about the hymen? What about the hymen? Here is our first myth, that the hymen is a physical sign of virginity. The hymen, also known as the vaginal corona, is a tiny mucous membrane that kind of looks like a crescent moon on one side of the vagina. It's usually stretchy and super thin. Usually it does not pop or break during first-time sex. Some people can't even feel the hymen. Many times gynecologists can't see it. Neither tampons nor masturbation tear it, and usually neither does intercourse. What can tear it, or any other part of the vagina for that matter, is having sex when there's not enough lubrication, when you're anxious, stressed, afraid, not in the mood, or not aroused enough. The vagina expands and loosens during sexual arousal and usually becomes lubricated. If your body is physically aroused enough, chances are sex won't hurt and you won't bleed. You heard me right. First time doesn't have to hurt. That's another common myth. Don't worry if your first time did hurt though. Usually your first time is stressful, you're anxious or embarrassed, or you and your partner may not have any clue what to do. You're usually rushed and too focused on the end result to actually enjoy yourself. Which brings us our next myth. The first time you have sex is always super romantic and amazing with rose petals and your one true love. Chances are that's not necessarily going to happen, especially if your head has been filled with myths and about how sex, and especially first-time sex, is supposed to be. Now there are some things that can cause sex during intercourse, like sometimes your hymen is too thick or covers more of the vagina than it's supposed to, but in those cases it usually has to be removed by a doctor. Also, some people don't produce enough lubrication vaginally, which is why we have a great thing called lube. The hymen isn't the only myth about how first-time sex is supposed to change you physically. Some people are also told that sex makes you an adult. It makes your hips or breasts bigger, or maybe makes your penis bigger. That doesn't happen. Sex in no way affects you physically. Yep, it also doesn't make the vagina looser. You heard me right. The vagina is a muscle, and sex works out that muscle. When you work out a muscle, it doesn't get loose. You may feel a little looser during sex, as you have it more often, because you and your partner are getting better at working together. You're learning about what turns you on, and you're actually enjoying sex and relaxing, so your vaginal muscles relax as well. However, after you finish having sex and you're no longer aroused, it goes right back to normal. Sex is supposed to change you emotionally though, right? It definitely can. Some people do feel closer to their partner after sex, or they may feel relieved or more self-assured, or they may feel nothing. They may even be disappointed, especially if they've been led to believe that first-time sex is supposed to be fireworks, but don't know how to get there. A lot of people believe the myth about oxytocin. Yes, oxytocin is released during orgasm, childbirth, and breastfeeding, but it's also released during cuddling, masturbating, kissing, casual touch, and social situations, even situations that make you feel more anxious rather than excited. It does not bond two people together forever and isn't some magical, mythical love hormone. So, what do we know about virginity so far? It isn't a physical change, and it isn't an emotional or hormonal change. So, what is it? It's a cultural milestone. To each person, it means something different. For some people, it means a lot. For others, it means nothing. Some people don't even like using the term virginity and prefer phrases like sexual debut. And that's okay. That's right, it's okay no matter what you feel about your virginity or lack thereof. It's okay to want to save your virginity, to wait until you find someone you love, or wait until you graduate high school, or wait until you move out of your parents' house, or even to not ever want to have sex at all. Not all people want to have sex, and that's okay. It doesn't make you a prude or a lesser person. It's also okay to have sex whenever you want to. Because sex doesn't change you physically or mentally, a person who has lots of sex isn't any different from a person who has had no sex or has little sex. Now, as a sex educator, I would hope that you would use protection from pregnancy and STDs, and I will remind you that sex always needs consent. Statistically speaking, people who have sex with lots of other people are more likely to use protection than those who have sex with only one person or very little people, which can make them more safe, considering, yes, Virginia, you can get pregnant or get an STD the first time you have sex. Even if they've said they've been tested, even if they say they're STD free, even if they look healthy, and even if you go and get tested together and see each other's results. So now we're back where we started. What is virginity? Virginity, or your sexual debut, is whatever you make it as. I personally like to think that we have a lot of little virginities. The first time we kiss someone, the first time we touch someone, the first time we orgasm, the first time we bring someone else to an orgasm. There are so many different firsts that can happen with a partner, or many partners, and it's fun to celebrate every single one. Just don't get hung up on what misguided people may think about it, and don't judge others for what they have or haven't done. Until my next video, this is FYSC signing off. Love and dental dams.